The purpose of this video is to show you that you can achieve a 7 in Econ HL or SL yourself. And the reason this video is so important is that a lot of you don't have IB trained teachers. You don't have those teachers that are experienced in the IB. And a lot of you need to take matters into your own hands. So this video is going to show you how you can fare out in a lot of cases better if you self-study the subject, and you'll be able to get top marks. So I'm going to show you exactly what kind of resources you need and what kind of structure you need to follow to make sure that you're getting every bit out of your self-studying as possible. So what are some of the major components that you need in order to do this successfully? Well, you're going to need an online teacher, a good one. You're going to need the right textbook. You're going to need a revision guide, and specifically for the IB, you're going to need IA help and exam technique help. These two are really important. So the first thing, an online teacher. The person you're going to want to look at is a guy called Jason Welker. I've mentioned him in my previous videos, but essentially he's this really experienced IB teacher that, in fact, he wrote his own IB textbook. He's that good. So the reason I like Jason Welker is that he has made great videos for all the main concepts of the syllabus. So he goes, one of the things I really like, he goes very in depth. Okay, his videos are about 20 minutes long for each topic, so you know he's not just skimping over things. He takes his time to explain it to you. And also, one thing which is often overlooked is that he uses a lot of examples. And the reason that's so important is that in paper 1 especially, you need to include examples if you're going to write for your answer, otherwise you're not going to get high marks. So those two things are very important. The way I use Jason Welker is that since I had to essentially self-study the whole Econ HL syllabus myself, because I miss all my HL classes, that in the span of like 2 days I went through every single HL video, and I saw those videos first so that later when I went to my textbook it led to more effective reading. But the reason being is that I already had a very good overview of the topic because I already saw his videos. So because of that, when I was reading, all these concepts were already sort of familiar to me, so I could take them in a lot more easier. So you use him to explain all the major concepts, so when you use your textbook, things are going to go much more easier for you. Trust me, you can think of Jason Welker as having the most efficient econ teacher at your disposal. If you're a regular teacher, it takes 45 minutes to explain something. This guy can do it much better in 20 minutes, so don't skimp out on him. He's a really good teacher. Now, after you've viewed his videos for the corresponding topic, so supposing you're doing demand supply, you view his videos on demand and supply first, then you go into your textbook. If you're doing something like international trade, go to your international trade videos first and then go to your textbook. Now, what about the textbook? Which textbook are you supposed to use? Well, I prefer a combination of textbooks, and the reason being is that I haven't found the perfect textbook for IB Econ. Jason Welker has written one, but I never got to use it in my time as an IB student, so I can only give you recommendations based on what I know. But this is a very powerful combination, the Oxford IB book and the Cambridge IB book. The reason being is that the Oxford IB book excels in terms of explanation. The Cambridge book excels in terms of econ math. So the reason I like the Oxford book is that they explain things very naturally. And the Cambridge book, what they do is they have a syllabus statement, and then they put the corresponding explanation, syllabus statement, corresponding explanation, syllabus statement, content, which is a format I don't like. The reason being is that I feel that just because the syllabus statements are presented in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow them. You have to cover them, but the Oxford book does it is that they have an explanation, and then naturally, after you understand that, you naturally know what the syllabus statements are. It's a really good book, and honestly, it made Econ HL so easy for me. I remember because my friends in other schools, they kind of pressured me into using the Cambridge book by Ellie Trugates. They said that that's the book you need for a 7 in Econ HL. So I listened to them. For a couple of months, I learned from this book, and it was really difficult because things were it just wasn't natural for me for some reason. But when I was reading the Oxford book, it just stuck in my head, if that makes sense. So the way I recommend you go to the Oxford book for explanation. And in terms of econ math, which is a very important part of the syllabus, for your paper 3 you have one whole section on quantitative skills. The Oxford book is terrible at that. It has very few examples and very few steps on the way you approach those questions, but the Cambridge book is amazing. Like, they explain the formulas, they explain what you need to do, how you're going to do it, shortcuts that the Oxford book doesn't even have. So this is very powerful for math. Now, there is an argument that the Oxford book isn't as detailed as the syllabus needs to be, and there is some truth to that to a certain extent. For example, they didn't explain moral hazard very well as opposed to the Cambridge book, which did that really in detail. And that's true, like I said, but you have to understand that all the major concepts of the syllabus, the Oxford explains 10 times better. Not 10 times, but a lot better than the Cambridge book. So when you get, 85% of the syllabus at your disposal, because you already know that from the Oxford book, the remaining 15% is not that daunting to learn from the Cambridge book. The main thing is, remember, you go to the Oxford book first, learn all major content. It has the detail. It isn't as detailed as the Cambridge book. You learn everything from the Oxford book, iron out a little bit of the details, fashion it out with the Cambridge book, rely on this for econ math. Now, what about this? So here's the thing, because econ math has only been introduced for about 3 or 4 years now, there aren't a lot of past papers with which you can practice these questions. So there's a workbook by OSC, I think it was by a guy named George Graves, and they had an HL math workbook. So once you learn your math from the Cambridge Ellie Tregake's book, this is by Ian Jordan Jocelyn Bing, this is by Ellie Tregake's, after you learn the math, you go towards this workbook and you practice the problems. And if you're self-studying, this is very important because you need to make sure that your quantitative skills are up to par, because honestly, I thought that quantitative skills were a joke. I didn't pay much concentration to them until the end of my studies. Thankfully, I still managed to get a 7 in HL, but never neglect the quantitative skills. It's an extremely easy paper to get marks in, and it's such a shame if you don't practice it. So you use this book to practice. This is very important. And also, just a bonus, a lot of times, because there aren't so many questions, a lot of times schools take their mock exam quantitative skills from this book, from the HL Math OSC book. So I'm telling you, Oxford, Cambridge, and the OSC book, amazing combination for learning content and course theory. Now, I looked at 3 revision guides for IB Economics. I looked at the Oxford revision guide, I looked at one by another person, I looked at one by OSC, and I didn't like any of them. So what I ended up doing for my revision guide, so to speak, I used this YouTube channel called Econ Plus Dal. He is amazing. The reason I really like him is that Jason Welker had videos that went really in depth, but this guy covered more of the course, a little bit less in depth, but he was like the perfect revision resource. Anytime I forgot something, I'd go to his YouTube channel, check out the video, and after that, all my doubts were cleared. Econ Plus Dal acts as an amazing revision resource. Anytime you're going along the course, don't keep on going back to your textbook. Don't keep on relearning the same thing. Go back. The fact that he explains it to you very nicely is a very, very big bonus. So again, Econ Plus Dal is an amazing revision resource. He's the perfect guide, and best of all, he's free. You don't have to purchase another book. Okay, so after you've got your textbook, you've got your online teacher, you've got a revision guide, now you need help for your IA. Well, there's this article published by a guy called Tim Woods. Now, a lot of you know him. He's an IB business and economics teacher at OFS in Singapore. But basically, he made an article on how to structure your economics IA. And with that article, I got near perfect scores. I got, almost full on all my 3 IAs that I submitted. Because of his article, it was just that good. It was super simple. He breaks down what you need to do. All you have to do is to follow that article, and trust me, your econ IA is going to be a lot better than just, a lot of your friends will just go to the textbook, scrape up a little bit of information, a little bit of content, try to explain the diagram. Trust me, the way he structures it is very, very useful, and you can really, really get top marks. He also shows you something that's very important, is how to handle the evaluation part of your commentary. So the evaluation part, if I'm not mistaken, it's worth 4 marks out of 14. And that is the scoring portion. That's where a lot of people, they don't score as much because they can't handle that part effectively, but he shows you how to do that. So go to Tim Woods' IA article, you're not going to regret it. Now, a few extra points for your IA. You have to make three economics commentaries, and you have four topics that you can choose from. You have micro, macro, international. You also have developmental. Don't do developmental economics. Choose micro, macro, and international, because these are very, very easy to do. They have very effective diagrams. The thing about developmental economics for an IA is that it's a bit vague. Even my teacher discouraged it. You look online, people discourage you from doing a developmental economics IA. So choose from these 3. Okay, do these 3 as your IA. Also, one thing I want to tell you guys is to keep your IA simple. A lot of people think that just because they're in HL, they need to do HL topics, which is totally not true. I did mine on all SL topics. I kept it extremely simple, and I got really, really good marks. A lot of people, they take on more burden than what they need to. I don't really get that. I don't know what you're trying to prove to the person who's going to grade your IA that you're an HL. So stick to SL topics. Don't complicate it. Write a simple but powerful IA. Also, one more thing. Don't do a topic where you have to use multiple diagrams. If you can get one diagram, just one diagram, and I explain it fully as it's mentioned in the article by Tim Woods. If you can just get one diagram, explain that fully, because you only have 750 words. This portion is going to take up at least 100 to 150 words. If you can just get one diagram and explain it fully, that's going to lead to a much more powerful IA than getting two diagrams and explaining them half-heartedly. Okay, so you got your how to do your IA, so to speak. Now the last thing is your exam technique. So for exam technique, it's extremely simple. All you need to do is go to, again, Econ Plus Style. He has an IB Econ playlist that purely focuses on exam technique. And the reason that this is so important is because, especially in paper 1, 30% I can reckon is that 30% of your marks that come from your long answer question come from exam technique. There are just certain IB specific things that they want you to include. They want you to include examples. There's a special way that they want you to end your concluding paragraph. They want you to, define terms. There are certain things that you need to know. And Econ Plus Dal has about, I think, like 10 videos on this whole thing. He goes through all the different papers. So paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, he gives you tips and how to use exam technique in that. This is especially important because if you don't have an IB trained teacher, they're not going to be able to guide you in this regard, and you need to take matters into your own hands. And I watched his video one night before my paper 1 exam and my paper 2 exam. It helped me so much. You wouldn't even believe. He showed me, there was this one video on how to write a concluding paragraph and how you're supposed to evaluate different stakeholders and different perspectives and long-term versus short-term. It's so funny. I was 2 years in the course. My teacher, it helped tremendously. I'm so sure that video brought my answer to another level. So again, you need to focus on exam technique, and this guy has the perfect video for that. So to reiterate my whole point, you can achieve a 7 in Econ HL or SL yourself. You don't need a good teacher. All you need to do is know how to study, which I've shown you. I've shown you which textbook to use, which video to use before you use the textbook, the best revision guide, how to do your IA or exam technique. If you can follow that and you work at that, I can guarantee that a 7 is not only possible, but it's extremely likely. So hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or email me. I have my email in the about page. If you have any questions regarding your IA, which textbook, which parts of the textbook you recommend, just let me know. I'll be very happy to help you. So have fun. Hope you guys can take econ into your own hands and independently study and beat everyone that's relying on their Khmer teacher.